everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. So much has happened since this Dateline NBC report. So much new information came out on the Brian Kohberger case, And there's, even though so much new information came out, there's so much more information that we know that the prosecution has that has yet to be released, that will have to, of course, wait for the trial. But I think a lot of doubters about the relative guilt or innocence of Brian Kohberger have seen this new evidence and have really come around. And not that it's important. You can think whatever you want to think. You can think that Brian Kohberger is innocent. You can think he's guilty. That doesn't matter. What matters is that he's given a fair trial and he's innocent until proven guilty. And we will learn about all of the evidence that the state has once this case goes to trial in August. However, when we do hear about some of this new information released from Dateline NBC, we realize how horrific of a crime this really was. And whether or not you believe, again, it's not important what you believe. You're not going to be sitting on that jury unless I'm talking to one of the 12 here. One of the things is to realize how savage this was, and that 4 young, beautiful kids lost their lives during this incident. Madison Mogan, Kaylee Gonzalez, Ethan Chapin, and Zaina Canodal. Just absolutely horrific. So we're going to talk about this. We're also going to talk about some of the traits that we believe that Brian Kohberger had that showed a capability of doing something like this. And tomorrow night at 9 p.m., we're going to have the wonderful forensic psychologist, Dr. Joni Johnson, who also happens to be a serial killer expert. She's going to come on the show, and based on what's already out there about Brian Kohberger, she's going to give a bit of an assessment. And we love having Dr. Joni on the show. She's a pleasure. She's so learned in regards to this field. And we're just thrilled, Mike and I are thrilled to have her. So folks, hold on to your hats, hold on to your loved ones, hold on to your wig, hold on to your toupee, hold on to your cup of coffee. You're about to enter true crime from a police perspective. You're about to enter the off-the-cuff zone, the police off-the-cuff zone. There has to be some common sense.
They were the ones who called 911 to get him help, and now they're calling for change.
Now a word from our sponsor. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your #1 source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season is in full swing, and we're into the NBA and NHL playoffs. And BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting while the games are being played. With the largest selection of odds on everything from Major League Baseball, NBA, NHL, and UFC, BetOnline remains the best online source for all your sports wagering info. In between games, head over to the BetOnline Casino with all the top Vegas-style games, including poker and live casino. BetOnline, the game starts here. It's so wonderful to have my co-host here, and I almost any time I could call him day or night, I shine the bat light up in the sky, and Professor Mike is available. He'll drop his lawnmower, he'll drop his teaching tools, and he'll be right on the air. Welcome to the show, retired NYPD Sergeant, professor at Albertus Magnus College in Connecticut, attorney, Professor Mike Geary. Welcome, Mike.
Bill, thank you for having me on. Good afternoon. Good to see you.
I appreciate, Mike, that you're so available almost all the time, and I know you got a busy life. Mike, we did some of the new information that came out from Dateline NBC, Kohberger's creepy cell phone and internet searches, and a lot of the pictures that he had of Washington State University students apparently on his phone, of Idaho University students on his phone, some of them that were friends of the victims. That puts this at a whole different level. His Google searches, searching a paper that was done on Ted Bundy. All of these things put this in an entirely different frame. There, you look at Kohlberger and Bundy, they even look a little bit alike, and maybe because the pictures are side by side. But what was he so infatuated by serial killers? Did he long to be one? And that is one of the psychological issues that we will perhaps talk to Dr. Joni on tomorrow night at 9:00. But in your assessment, Mike, doesn't this sort of tick up the sort of the scale of guilt a little bit, that he's, and of course people say, because he searched Bundy and because he had these pictures doesn't make him a serial killer. You're 100% right. And we say all the time on this show, almost all the evidence in this case is circumstantial. And these searches are also circumstantial. Professor Mike.
Yeah, Bill, when you look at what has happened, 4 people were slaughtered in their sleep brutally with the knife. That is not a shot from, say, 40 yards away, very impersonal. This is real personal. You can't get any more up close and personal than jumping on top of somebody and stabbing them to death repeatedly. So these crimes are crimes of real violence, anger. And so we wonder, where does that come from? Well, there's an idea that what's called positive dissonance, and he was downloaded an article on positive dissonance, and he was very fascinated how serial killers could seemingly, like Ted Bundy, be bright, articulate, or Dennis Rader, the BTK killer in Kansas, to be kind of a little bit shy and withdrawn, but still have a family and things like that. The duality of this normalcy hiding a deep, dark secret. And I think perhaps because he had a real difficult time feeling warmth towards people in his family and knowing that that was something wrong with that, I think stumbling upon the idea of studying serial killers and their issues of having, this duality, I think really fascinated him. And therefore, although, it's not indicative of criminal intent, or it's not indicative of any sort of, it's not circumstance, it's not direct evidence of guilt. However, and we do know he was a student in the PhD program, the idea that he's looking at these papers and you couple it with some of the pictures on his phone, pictures that he himself took, but some of them aren't of people that he met. Some of them are people who posted things online on their Facebooks. He was taking pictures of taking photos of Facebook pictures that were revealed to the public, that people put out there, showing how they enjoyed their lives. So you could see there's a struggle there because he wants to have these things, but he has no clue as to how to go about getting them. And seeing how in his life, there's nobody really close to him, it perhaps in some ways frees him to act out on any violent urges he may have.
And watching the Dateline NBC report, there were at least 2 girls that wanted to go out with him. One, sure. a girl named Holly, and one was an Asian girl who was his office mate.
Right.
And she was actually attracted to him. So the first girl, Holly, got freaked out by his behavior and backed out of the situation. The second girl, who was his office mate, the Korean girl, I don't have her name right now, she believed that he had broken into her apartment. So she sort of backed away from that too. So inappropriate, to say the least, inappropriate behavior that at the point where maybe something would have happened with a member of the opposite sex, the person backed away because of his scary behavior. About 2 months ago, FBI agent, retired agent, attorney, former prosecutor, and a serial killer profiler, Jim Clemente, was on News Nation. I want to play a little bit what he said because he hits it right on the head here.
Yeah. They've never been in this situation before. They never should have been in this situation.
And one of the roommates said that she had been drinking that night. She described herself as being drunk, and that she wasn't even sure that she had seen what she had seen, or if in fact maybe she had dreamed it. So on top of all, it's 4:30 in the morning. You add in that factor, they're not even sure what they're seeing.
Exactly. They've never experienced this before. They didn't know really what was happening. Of course, you have a guy, they don't know. It's an open house. People come in and out all the time. So they didn't know that this person was definitely an intruder who had very bad intentions.
When this story first emerged, you drew on some of your profiling experience and said that you thought that the killer either had a relationship with one or more people inside the house, or that he'd been stalking somebody in the house.
Right.
Has your analysis changed now that Bryan Kohberger's been arrested and we're learning all these details?
Yeah, I think the information that we have tells me that there was at least pre-attack surveillance, and that is a form of stalking. Basically, this person who committed this crime didn't just do it on a whim. They thought about this for a long time. They actually built up fantasies about how it would go. And in order to actually make the plans, they most likely were in the neighborhood, looking at that place, looking at other potential places they could attack, and chose this one based on the situation.
What would make somebody do something like this?
Well, I think the best indicator is basically what his behavior was. I mean, the fact that he left his phone back at his house, he was planning this. His studies, for example, give an insight into what he wanted to do. But the fact is, I think he wanted to commit the perfect crime in his mind. And unfortunately, these victims were the just luck of the draw. And it's like I said, it should never have happened. But the fact is that he wanted the notoriety. He wanted to be able to pull off something that he thought nobody else could. He thought he was smarter than everybody else in the world.
What do you make of Kohberger's defense lawyer trying to get the death penalty off the table by saying he has autism? First of all, wouldn't that only come into play in sentencing, not in determination of guilt?
Most likely, absolutely. I think they're trying to say that it's prejudicial somehow, but I think this is similar to them making the statement that he had a privacy interest in the knife sheath and that he had a privacy interest in the DNA of other people. I think they're throwing whatever they can against the wall and seeing what'll stick. This is just a defense tactic because they know that it's a very, very strong case against their client.
Because, by the way, if it is Bryan Kohberger, and there's a lot of evidence pointing to Bryan Kohberger, he did a lot of things to try and cover up his crime. This is an indication he knew. It's not like I didn't know what I was doing was wrong. Whoever, if it's him, he knew what he was doing was wrong. He tried to cover it up.
Absolutely right. In a case where you can have an insanity defense, it is a defense that they don't know that what they did, they don't appreciate the fact that it's wrong or against the law. And the fact that you cover something up or hide it at all means that you do appreciate the wrongfulness of your actions. Right. So it wouldn't work.
Jim Clemente, great to see you. Thanks for coming.
Jim Clemente, just so you guys know, he was the lead writer for the TV show Criminal Minds. That makes him more credible, but he's a retired FBI agent. He was a prosecutor. He's got a law degree. He's been on this show. He's a friend of Bobby Chacon, who's a good friend of mine. And Jim Clemente, he did a profile on the Gilgo Beach killer 12 years before the Gilgo Beach killer, Rex Heuermann, who we think is the Gilgo Beach killer, who's under arrest right now for it. He hit it on the head. It was profiled in the New York Times. It's exactly Rex Heuermann. And this was 12 years before Rex Heuermann was arrested. So Jim Clemente is probably one of the best profilers in the world. And you hear some of the things he said. Bryan Kohberger thinks he's smarter than everyone. The reconning of the location, that was part of the thrill of doing this, I believe. He was getting off, and we know from the Dateline NBC report that they had 23 phone pings during the process, which were 100 meters from 1122 King Road, prior to November 13th, which is the date where these murders took place. So was that part of him getting off on the planning and searching? And Jim Clemente also said, FBI profiler Jim Clemente said that there had to be some prior relationship or some relationship he built in his mind with one of the victims from 1122 King Road. And people in the know were saying, and I got to think it's a leak, that the person he was infatuated with was Madison Mogen. Mike.
Yeah, Bill, as much as there's like 8 billion people in this world, but you can narrow down human needs, human drives, human emotions, human desires, human motivations to just a handful of things: lust, power, greed, envy, dominance, things like that. And that's what, people like Shakespeare and everybody else writes about. So what motivates him, even though he's one of, a billion people in the world, he's not very different from other people who are sociopathic serial killers, if he is indeed the killer of those 4 people. Again, he's presumed innocent until proven guilty. But it fits the reconning, the planning, then the covering up later on of the purchase of the knife, because he understood that once that knife sheath was found, he knew it was going to be found. Maybe at the time he tried to cover it up, he didn't know yet. It may not have been released to the public, but he knew that he was accounting for everything. He knew he left something behind. He tried covering it up. That's what Jim Clemente said. It's a recognition of what you've done, and therefore it is consciousness of guilt. But yeah, you take a look at all Ted Bundy, BTK killer, all these other killers. They're as different as they are in their relationships growing up and their jobs they have and what they've achieved and how they live their normal everyday life outside, looking at the public, so the public sees what they see. They have some sort of deep, dark motivation for doing what they do, and so the motivation is probably in here: lust and power towards and aggression towards women specifically. And you're right, somewhere along the line, some of the people that he went to look in their Facebook and take pictures from their Facebook on his laptop, he then probably somehow stumbled upon Kaylee or Madison, and whoever in those put out probably the most images of themselves looking beautiful. That probably attracted him more than anything else, and he fixated. And he's got that ability to, once he fixates, like these, we know about the BTK killer, he will spend months doing what he calls, I think he called it like an operation or something like that. He had a special term he used for a project, and he would spend months reconnoitering and doing exactly the same behaviors that we're alleging that Kohlberger did. But it is scary that there's an ability of criminologists like Jim Clemente to figure out what silo people are in. Very scary.
It's also scary to think that could he have found a victim in his Facebook searches and then sought out that victim based on their picture on Facebook, which, could be an argument to maybe get off social media. Yeah. When you have wackos like this, if in fact Brian Kohlberger is the person that committed this crime. And if he used this technique, which, look, it's like a candy store for someone that is a serial killer or a killer to search his victims using social media. And I'm sure if Brian Kohlberger is the killer, he's not the first one to do this, nor the last. This is a short clip on his Google searches.
Activities have come to light. The 30-year-old, who has been accused of fatally stabbing University of Idaho students Madison Mogen, Kaylee Gonsalves, Xana Kernodle, and her boyfriend Ethan Chapin in November of 2022, was active on Google in the weeks before and after the killings, according to records from Kohlberger's phone in the possession of law enforcement obtained by Dateline. In addition to searches on infamous serial killer Ted Bundy, the records indicate Kohlberger made online inquiries for pornography with the words, quote, forced, passed out, drugged, and sleeping, per the phone data. But that's not the only activity discovered by law enforcement on his cell phone. In court documents, authorities said they found a selfie of Kohberger, quote, taken from his phone on November 13th, 2022, only hours after the homicides at 10:31 a.m. In the photo, which was attached to the filing, Kohberger, dressed in a button-down shirt and with Bluetooth earbuds in, stood in front of what appeared to be a shower as he smiled at the camera and held up a thumbs up. And according to the court documents, the state intends to introduce the image of Kohberger because of the witness, who was only identified as DM, says she saw a male in the student's home wearing a ski mask that only revealed his nose and eyes. She also told police she remembered his, quote, bushy eyebrows. According to docs, the state also intends to share Kohberger's driver's license, which lists him as 6 feet tall, to compare against the witness's description of, quote, male, white, skinny athletic build, a few inches taller than DM, who stands at 5'10", not someone she knew, with bushy eyebrows. The statement reads, quote, whether or not Brian Kohberger can be described as having bushy eyebrows is a factual determination to be decided by the jury.
So some new information there, Mike. And to me, when it's described, and we were told when we were first introduced to this photo you see on the screen, and that was taken at 10:31 hours on the morning of 11/13/2022, which is the morning of the murders. We've discussed this before, that this is a victory photo, a trophy photo. No doubt he showered to make sure he had got any remaining evidence that potentially was on his clothing or his body. And I'm sure he threw his clothing out and made sure he was scrubbed down and got any blood or hair or any other biological fluids or forensic evidence that possibly could link him to that crime. But to me, this is a really spooky, scary, creepy photo, but perhaps not even as creepy as this one. This one, to me, looks like the Grim Reaper. He's wearing a hood. He's dressed all in black. It's almost like he's dressed the way you would perceive a serial killer to dress. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Bill, it's so creepy that, it's one thing if you get somebody takes a picture of you, or, you're in a group photo and you got your eyes closed or you're looking away and, you didn't smile. This thing, the way he's taking it, from the angle he's taking it, it is designed to look creepy. He's not he's not smiling with, with his teeth and looking, sitting down at a chair and looking relaxed. No, he's standing up, he's taking this picture, and you can see from the angle, he's trying to look creepy. He's all by himself. He's in his dorm, in his graduate apartment, and he is probably, who knows what time of the day or night it is, but this is what he's doing. He's not in a library working. He's sitting in his room, intentionally taking a really creepy selfie. If that alone doesn't make, creep you out, then nothing will, because that is very telling. That's where his mind is at. And I've opined that maybe he's trying to figure out how much he has to cover up his facial features in order for people to be able to describe him. And that's where I think that's where I think he goes to the balaclava, and to really mask his face. But that is a really creepy intent to photo, which shows an intent to look creepy.
I want to play a quick clip from News Nation again with Elizabeth Vargas here.
Welcome to News Nation's Back Scroll, where we look back at our major news coverage on the most important topics and personalities of our time.
And welcome to this Thursday edition of Banfield. I want to begin with some breaking news on the Idaho murder case. A couple of sources with knowledge of the investigation have told News Nation some details that up until now we did not know. Let me lay a few of these details out, but I do want to warn you that this is graphic information and it is uncomfortable to hear this because we're talking about innocent kids who were killed in that home back in October. And not only that, this
She meant November. She made a mistake. November 13th it was.
This is evidence that likely will come out in court at some point. Whether it will be germane to who the killer is or not, that remains to be seen. But it could be evidence nonetheless. With that in mind, let me let you know what these sources have told News Nation. Number one, they told us that the victims, Kaylee Gonzalez and Madison Mogen, were killed first, and they confirmed that Ethan Chapin and Xana Kernodle were killed on the second floor afterwards. And these are some of the other details that they have released. They said that Ethan Chapin was killed in the doorway of Xana Kernodle's room before the killer set upon Xana. The sources say that it appeared Ethan had stepped partly into the hallway where the attack may have begun. These sources also say that Ethan Chapin suffered a slash to the neck. But I have to say that both of these details are in direct conflict with what the coroner had originally told us right here on this program exclusively. And also, they conflict directly with what police have said as well. And those two facts that are in conflict are that all of the victims were in their beds, according to police and the coroner. And according to the coroner, all of the injuries were stab wounds and not slash wounds. So I just want to play for you exactly what it was the coroner said in her words.
Well, we're not going to listen to that now. Suffice it to say that much of the information that some of the media, even, we've made mistakes ourselves, that the media put out there will be totally corrected during the trial. And we will get the absolute correct information. And, there's a lot of people out there, we mentioned Howard Bloom, who's written a book and who's made so many mistakes. And I'm not just targeting him. Many others have also. But we will get all of the accurate information once the trial begins, of course. And we have said from the very beginning that we believe the prosecution has much more evidence than we, content creators on YouTube and the mainstream media, knows about or has released. So that will be leading in tomorrow night at 9:00 when we will have Dr. Joni Johnson, forensic psychologist, serial killer expert. She's going to come on the show. She's wonderful. She's really learned in this field. It's amazing that someone that looks so sweet like her is in this business. It's such a horrific, disturbing type of field to be in, but she's amazing. Anyway, we're going to give a complete update, but from a different angle tomorrow night at 9:00. And folks, if you're not subscribed to this show, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, hit the like button, share us with your friends and your family. Mike, very quickly, your final thoughts.
Thank everybody who's tuned in, and to say that have faith in the prosecution. The prosecution has way more evidence. Even Matt Murphy, who has come on the show and spoken on other channels, has said, because he knows he's done death penalty cases in out in Los Angeles, in California.
Actually, Orange County, California.
Orange County, thank you. Yeah, so he knows the kind of evidence that is collected in these kind of cases, and he's very sure that they have tremendous evidence leading to the guilt of Bryan Kohberger. So have faith in law enforcement.
Absolutely. Folks, again, we'll see you tomorrow night, 9 p.m. with Dr. Joni Johnson. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great day, and God bless everyone.
One episode, just ain't enough.